What's up everybody, this is Leo with Keyprint Co. And today we want to show you the benefits of printing hoodies using the 16x10 Platen that comes with the Ultimate Print Shop package. Let's get started. When you're printing hoodies, there's a lot of challenges that you have to overcome that you might not even know about until you print your first hoodie. So today we're going to go over what some of those challenges are and why the 16x10 Platen can help you avoid all of them. So right now what I want to do is I want to make sure we have the correct coverage area. So the cool thing about this machine is it chops it up into 4 equal bits. And each one of these sections you can control with these arrows. So for this job, I want to do the top 3 sections of the pre-treat area. All right, now let's put the hoodie on the pre-treat machine. And what you want to do is you want to make sure the hood goes down into this little spot. You want to make sure that the rest of the hoodie is tucked into the Platen. So tuck it in from all sides. Now because we're only going to be doing the top 3 sections of the pre-treat area, we want to make sure that everything else is tucked into the machine. Now we're just going to bring it in. So now we're going to switch out the pre-treat. And the way to do that is you put a bottle here where the nozzle is, and you clean it out. And what you're trying to do is get all of the water to drain out of the pre-treat machine. Now remember, you wanted that water in there before because it keeps the lines clear and it keeps it from clogging. Once all the water's out, the next step is you want to fill it in with the pre-treat solution of your choice. And in this case, we're going with FBX 100 GTX Optimized. Cool. Now you just want to close up the top. Now we're just going to make sure that the hoodie's exactly what we want. Put it into the pre-treat machine and you hit start. Now the next step is to take a brush and to mat all of the fibers down. Alright, we just pre-treated the hoodie. Now we're going to take it over to the heat press so we can dry it. What you really want to focus on is making sure that the pre-treated area is on top of the heat press Platen. Because if it's falling off to the sides, you're going to notice that it's still going to be wet afterwards. One of the things I like to do before I heat press is just let it hover dry for a second. And that's because we want to take out a lot of the superficial moisture, right? Because if you don't, what ends up happening is sometimes it just crystallizes in, and that's when you get a lot of this residue left over from the pre-treat. So letting it, hover dry for a minute or two definitely helps. Now we just want to make sure that we protect our heat press by adding some paper in the middle. And alright, so honestly what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that the pressure's good before we get started. I might like it a little bit lighter than that. Typically what I'm going for is you want to heat press it, but you don't want to completely crush it, right? So as long as your temperature and your settings are right and your heat press is working fine, you want to make sure that you basically just clamp it down and it stays shut without necessarily crushing it. Again, what we want to try to avoid is the crystallization of the pre-treat. If the pre-treat starts crystallizing, it'll quite literally turn white, and that's not a good thing. Seeing all of the smoke though is a good thing because what it's telling us is it's evaporating all of the water that's being used as a carrier out of the garment, and it's going to give us a nice smooth print surface area. Peel back the paper, good to go. Alright, so let's talk about this for a second. We just heat pressed it after pre-treating it, and you might notice there's a few spots that didn't completely dry. Now the reason for that is because the pocket created these little height gaps between the pocket and the rest of the apparel. So right after the pocket, that's where the heat press didn't hit it exactly the same way as it did with the rest of it nice and evenly. It was a little bit too far away, and because of that, it left these wet spots right down here. Now, it's a really easy fix. In case this happens to you, don't jump to the conclusion that the heat press is broken. What you could do instead is just rearrange the apparel so that you could hit this spot a second time, or simply drop the heat press down again to try to get rid of this the second time around. But it's a really easy fix and nothing is wrong with the apparel. Alright, now it's time to print the hoodies. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to thread it on the 14x16 Platen that comes with your machine. And what we're looking for here is to make sure it's nice and straight, nice and centered, up here on the print surface area. After that, we want to tuck everything else in. And we want to try to anticipate where the artwork is going to land, right? So we want it center chest, about 3 fingers away from the collar. So it's good that the collar falls down here. Now you will notice that there's a pocket up here. So first thing we're going to do is do a height sensor check, right? What this is going to tell us is if it's too high or if there are obstructions, it's going to make that noise. And it's good because we want to know if a Platen is way too high, because what you don't want is for it to get a head strike. Once you get a head strike, you're looking at around $2,000 of repairs. So better safe than sorry. From here, what we're going to do is we're going to drop it down to the next step. And we're gonna keep doing this until we find a step where it doesn't ring anymore. So right now, we're going down to the first half, and this might take a little while. Now you might be asking yourself, isn't this a very viable solution for the print? And the answer is yes. If you have no other choice, this is pretty much what you're gonna have to do. But what you are gonna notice is that it will compromise the quality of the final print. And if you couldn't hear that, I dropped it down a few steps just to make this go a little faster. But it will compromise the quality of the print because the further away you are from the print head, the worse that the print will get. Okay, now unfortunately, right now we're on level 4, and we know that at level 4, it won't beep. But we do run 2 risks here if we start printing. The first one is, if it starts printing and this pocket starts coming up even a little bit, the problem's gonna be that we're gonna have to readjust it. And when you readjust something that's already printing, you run the risk that you're gonna get a ghost image. Basically 2 images that are printed, but they're not perfectly aligned. And it's typically the white underbase and the CMYK. The other thing that we're risking is, if we're gonna go start printing right now, at level 4, you're so far away from the print head that you're gonna start seeing diminished quality. So here's a trick that you can implement if you have no other choice. So if you look closely, you can see that the pocket is actually the highest point on the print surface area. Now because that's the case, one of the things we wanna try to do is to flatten it down as much as possible so we can get the platen as close to the print head as possible. One of the things that we've learned you can do is you can tape it down. Now, this is not advisable for a few reasons. The main one is this takes forever if you're actually in production. And also, we do not recommend straight up putting anything with residue on the platen or on the apparel. You're gonna see why afterwards, but you do have to make sure that the residue doesn't stay on the apparel afterwards. So depending on what type of apparel you're using, this is definitely a big no-no. But one of the things that we do try to do is flatten it out as much as possible. So once it's nice and flat, then we can start putting the hoop directly on it. Now again, you will come into some problems here where, because it's such an enormous amount of fabric, this is still gonna be the highest print surface area, but at least with tape, it'll hold it down as much as possible. Now, is this ideal for production? Absolutely not. At this point, we've already wasted time doing 2 overly excessive things, and that was doing a whole lot of height checks and taping it down. Now I'm having a little bit of trouble putting this hoop on because, as you can see here, these little bumps form. Now I'm not 100% happy with the results because the hoop isn't actually securing the hoodie down. The reason is the pocket is just pushing it so far out that it can't latch on properly. Alright, so the hoop just isn't working out for me because it's not even holding it down, and more so I feel like it's causing problems because the sides keep raising up. So we're just gonna take the hoop off. We're gonna try to smooth it out as much as we can manually, and then we're gonna see how it goes. So let's set up the artwork and let's get to printing.
Alright, so let's get the right platen size up here. Now the first thing you're gonna notice is that it's gonna clip off both sides of the artwork because it was 16 inches in width. So let's adjust it for this new platen. It's gonna be 13 inches. Alright. And everything else is corresponding. We want it to be about 3 inches up from the center. So 1, 2, 3 inches up from the top. And we do want it to be centered. So we're gonna put 0 here. Awesome. So centered, 3 inches away from the top where we know the collar's already at. We know that the apparel is centered on the print surface area, and we're ready to go. Now we just hit print, and we get right to it.
able to make this print. However, there's something that's really bothering me about this type of print that you should definitely look out for. The earth and the details inside of it are really fuzzy and they're all kind of blended in together. So if you have a client that's asking you for a really high detail image, like a photograph for example, they're definitely going to be disappointed when they see the quality of it, because remember, we had to make it so that the platen drops far enough down to not set off the height sensor, but we're also that much further away from the print head. And that's what's causing all of these fuzzy detail blurring images to happen. All right, so the first thing we're gonna do from here is carefully remove the tape. And as you can see, we're already getting some of the problems with the residue. So we're gonna have to clean this up afterwards. But for right now, just carefully remove that. Put it off to the side, and then you wanna take the entire hoodie off the platen. Very carefully. Now we're just gonna let it hover dry for a little bit, and then we're gonna cure it. All right, for that last print, we just printed it at number 4. Now keep in mind that the print head doesn't change where it's at. So the positioning of the platen determines how far from the print head you are. For the next one, we're gonna do it a lot closer to the print head so we get a lot better details. All right, now let's load up the 16x10 platen. The first thing you're gonna realize is that the pocket and the hood completely fall off the print surface area, so we don't even have to worry about them. No need to tape anything up, no need to mess around with anything like that. You just make sure that the spacing is where you want it to be. It's nice and centered, nice and straight. You just tuck in the rest of it, put the hoop on, engage the locks, and you're ready to print. All right, now for the last print, we had it set to 4, but for this one, we're gonna bring it all the way up and redo the height sensor test, because what we want is for the print area to be as close to the print head as possible. All right, we're gonna start it all the way at the highest, which is P, and we're gonna see where we start getting height sensor issues. All right, we just dropped it down to 1.5. Now I think this is gonna be good enough for this print, but it's a lot better than our previous print because 1.5 is gonna get us a lot closer than 4 will to the actual print head. So this image is gonna be sharper and a lot better in terms of quality. All right, let's set up the artwork. The first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna switch it out to the 16x20. And as you can see here, we already have a lot more space to work with. So I'm gonna make this 15 inches width, which is 2 inches more than we previously had to work with. And then I'm still gonna keep it centered. Now for me, I'm gonna make it so that the entire image is centered, because from the center, it's the exact dimensions that we want. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we're good there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we're good there. It's nice and centered. Now we're just gonna hit print, and we're ready to go. All right, now we're ready to print. Cool, print's done. Now all you have to do is unlock the hoop, remove that, set it off to the side, and then take off the apparel the same way you normally would. Now we're gonna heat press this and compare them both side to side. All right, we just printed up both of the hoodies, and I really wanna point out some big differences here. The first one is that when you use the 16x10 platen, you get a much bigger print surface space on a hoodie. And that's because it's a lot wider than it is taller. So you're automatically gonna get 2 extra inches on the sides. The other big difference that I want to highlight are that the details in the second print with the 16x10 are a lot sharper than with the 14x16. And again, it's because that pocket really prevents you from getting close to the print head, so you start losing a lot of the details the further down you drop the platen. The last detail that I really want to emphasize here is that you're going to get 0 to no ghosting when you use the correct platen, because the further you are from the print head, the higher you are at risking the platen moving, the apparel moving, and just like we thought, it did move a little bit during the print when you use the 14x16, and that's why the 16x10 doesn't have that weird ghosting effect. But when you use the correct platen, none of these are going to be an issue for you. You're going to get the biggest print surface space possible, and you're going to deliver a high quality print. Thank you guys so much for watching. This is actually one of my favorite videos to make because I actually struggled a lot with hoodies when I first got started. And to be honest, there's really no way to go about it. If you're gonna be doing hoodies with the normal platen, prepare yourself for a lot of tape, a lot of high checks, and a lot of misprints because of ghosting. But the good thing is that there's a solution now, the 16x10 platen. It's got you covered. It'll make your life a whole lot easier, and it'll make printing hoodies fun. So with that said, guys, thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.